Tobias Roman. We're in Bakersfield, California, for the arraignment of Tobias Roman. The 27-year-old was charged with multiple crimes, including attempted robbery, threatening with attempt to terrorize, and exhibiting a deadly weapon, for allegedly stalking a female employee at a shopping mall. And now his initial hearing is off to a rocky start. Once on his feet, the judge then asks a standard procedural question. Giggles may be his street name, but there's nothing funny about the crimes he's accused of committing. After being interrupted and then told to be quiet, Judge Charles Brimmer gives the defendant a final warning. For a second, it appears Giggles might quiet down, but his silence is short-lived. But as he's being led out of the courtroom, Roman gets in the last word. The judge heard that comment loud and clear. Tobias Roman later pled no contest to the charge of threatening a public official and was sentenced to 8 months in prison. Of his original charges were all dismissed, except for threatening with the intent to terrorize. He pled no contest and was sentenced to 3 years in prison. Austin Boone. Next, we're in Louisville, Kentucky, where 20-year-old Austin Boone is appearing on charges of speeding and possession of drug paraphernalia. Boone's been prepped by his attorney, but when Judge Stephanie Pierce Berg hits him with a tough question, he crumbles under the pressure. Despite his initial confusion, it looks like Boone will be on his way after accepting the conditions of his plea agreement, but as the judge finalizes the details, a bailiff notices a problem with Boone's courtroom attire. Not liking his response, the bailiff brings Boone's sagging pants to Judge Berg's attention. While some people in the courtroom find the sagging pants crackdown amusing, Judge Burke does not play. Austin Boone might be laughing now, but when he's called back in front of Judge Burke 15 minutes later, she reminds him who wears the pants in the courtroom play. But rather than using his time in the jury box to pull up his big boy pants, Boone took them off instead. He now appears just wearing the athletic shorts that were underneath. He voices a major concern. Austin Boone ultimately served 2 days in jail for the contempt of court charges. As for his original charges of speeding and possession of drug paraphernalia, the judge honored his plea agreement, ordering him to attend traffic school and pay $178 in fines. Isaiah Gardenhire. Next, we're in Mount Pleasant, Michigan, for the arraignment of Isaiah Gardenhire. The 40-year-old was arrested after reportedly going on a 2-day crime spree that forced a community into lockdown. Gardenhire reportedly sexually assaulted his girlfriend in her home, then killed her 13-year-old daughter before fleeing to a nearby apartment complex. There, he allegedly took a man and woman hostage, sexually assaulted the female, robbed them, and then stole their car. Gardenhire would eventually turn himself into police, but now as Judge Sarah Spencer Noggle reads the long list of charges against him, he appears to nod off. Moments later, another audible yawn distracts from the hearing. But the judge stays on track and asks prosecuting attorney David Barbary to weigh in on Gardenhire's bond conditions. The prosecutor also mentions that Gardenhire was actually out on bond for a separate criminal sexual misconduct case in another county when he went on the alleged 2-day crime spree. With the prosecutor mid-sentence, Gardenhire interrupts, claiming that his girlfriend should be charged with the murder of her daughter, not him. After further discussing his bond conditions, Gardenhire is brought back into the conversation, seemingly even less interested than before. This time, the defendant flips the judge the bird, first with one hand, then follows it up with a hearing-ending two-hander. The hearing was ultimately cut short due to Gardenhire's behavior. Isaiah Gardenhire is being held on $3 million bond for 12 criminal charges, including home invasion, first-degree criminal sexual misconduct, and murder. Camilla Gamet. We take you inside the Jackson County Courthouse and the sentencing of 31-year-old Camilla Gamet. She was convicted of first-degree murder in the brutal killing of her boyfriend, Marcel Hill. According to the evidence presented at trial, Gamet used a frying pan, a floor lamp, and a large knife which she used to stab Hill a dozen times. Gamet claimed self-defense, saying she believed Hill was an intruder. When the verdict came back guilty, Gamet stuck to her story. The local news only caught a handful of moments. Courtroom cameras captured every minute. Judge John McBain did not agree. Before Gamet sentencing the victims, Aunt Diana Banks Joyner addressed both Gamet and the court. The defendant appeared to be unmoved by anything Ms. Banks had to say. even with the threat of duct tape. While the judge waits for duct tape to arrive, he allows Banks to continue, and then the prosecutor rips in the... But before it was all over, it was Judge McBain who had the last word. Judge McBain sentenced Gamut to life in prison without the chance of parole. William Demopoulos. Next, we go to Berea, Ohio, for a probation hearing. The defendant's 18-year-old William Demopoulos. He's on probation for criminal damaging, unauthorized use of motor vehicle, and obstructing official business. Things have not started off well, as Judge Chris Green is annoyed with Demopoulos for refusing to hand over his cell phone to a probation officer. When the judge hands the phone to a clerk, the defendant starts to retreat. Sounds like this teen is willing to give up his freedom for a phone. The judge breaks it down for Demopoulos. Getting nowhere, the defendant changes his story. Even with deputies closing in, Demopoulos doesn't seem interested in cooperating. As quickly as Demopoulos hops over the table, the deputies tackle him to the floor. That's the defendant's grandfather-looking one man. The judge revokes the defendant's probation, and he's charged with resisting arrest. He's sent to jail for 40 days. Joining us now is the Judge Christopher Green. Judge Christopher Green, thanks very much for joining us, appreciated. So take us back to that day. What were you expecting as the proceedings started? Now, did you know him? Did you know anything about him before this started? Have you ever had anyone try and run out of your courtroom before? Now, at one point, you instruct the court officers to handcuff him. What were you thinking at that moment? Thanks for watching till the end. See you in the next one.